Sound check, 1, 2, 3. Sound check, 1, 2, 3.
Good afternoon and welcome to the LRT Subcommittee meeting for February 20th, 2025. We have quorum present in the horseshoe today. We have Councillor Kassar, Councillor Huang, Member Andrus, Member Salimi, and Councillor Maureen Wilson. Virtually, we have Councillor Crutch, we have Councillor Francis, we have Member Omazik, and then we have Member Walsh and thank you, and Member Wilson. Thank you. So we have quorum. On we go. A reminder that all electronic devices are to be switched to a non-audible function during committee meetings. And our first item up on the agenda is approval of our agenda. May I please have a mover and seconder? Moved by Councillor Kassar, seconded by Councillor Huang. Any discussion on the agenda? Seeing none, it's before committee to vote with a show of hands. Anybody opposed? That carries. On to declarations of interest. Any declarations to bring forward at this time? Seeing none, we'll go on to approval of our minutes of our previous meeting, which was on November 15, 2024. May I please have a mover and seconder? Moved by Councillor Crutch. Thank you. Councillor Francis, you're good to second? Thank you. And any discussion on the minutes? Seeing none, then it'll be also a show of hand vote. So if you're in favor, please indicate. And that carries unanimously. Thank you. Delegations, number 6. Before we begin our delegations for today, members are reminded that questions of delegates are for clarification purposes only and not for debate. And a note to our delegates, you have 5 minutes to complete your delegation. You'll hear a tone/ding at the 4-minute mark, which is an indicator to you that you've got a minute remaining for your delegation. So item 6.1, James Kemp, respecting street design and furniture standards for the Hamilton LRT corridor, report PED 25051 citywide. Delegate Kemp, are you with us? If you can turn off your microphone.
Hello?
Hi, good afternoon. Are you also able to turn on your camera?
It was on just a minute ago. I'm hoping it turns on.
Okay.
I don't know why this is being a problem all of a sudden. I apologize.
No worries. We're also trying to make sure we can see you on the screen in chamber, so just give us a minute too. Okay. Oh, you were there just a second ago. It might be a situation where audio is coming in through one and video is coming in through another. Delegate Kemp, we can see you in 2 spots in our grid. Are you needing to use 2 devices to stay connected?
I believe you should just give it a minute. It will disconnect. My computer's a little slow. There we go. Okay.
There we go.
I fixed the problem. I apologize for the confusion.
No worries. We can see you and hear you. Please proceed.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, Madam Chairperson and members of the LRT Subcommittee. Thank you for taking the time to hear from me today. I'm here today to discuss PED 25051, respecting street design and furniture standards for the Hamilton LRT corridor and the lack of accessibility consultation with the Accessibility Committee for Persons with Disabilities or the Built Environment Working Group. The AODA requires we be consulted before decisions like this are made for good reason. We're going to be the most affected by ill-informed decisions and can see barriers that others cannot. In reviewing the full report, there are many areas of concern that don't seem to address recommendations provided in the past to remove barriers and improve accessibility. The AODA is an old document and accounted for its own obsolescence and narrow focus by requiring accessibility advisory committees to consult municipalities on activity affecting persons with disability. The barrier-free design guidelines were also a good step to improving accessibility above and beyond the AODA, but it too requires something of an update. I believe that work has begun, but I'm not certain of it. We have learned a lot about what accessibility means and what defines a barrier over the past 20 years. The ACPD tries to foresee issues that before they become a problem by having a varied and diverse group of persons with disabilities involved in the planning and construction projects the City of Hamilton undertakes. I can say with some certainty that not all accessibility advisory committees are the same, and many have a more narrowed focus than we do, as we try to account for not just mobility or visual impairments, but auditory, sensory, developmental, intellectual, behavioral, and much more. I mention this because the street design and furniture guidelines will affect persons with disabilities as well as seniors for a long time until the next redesign. Furthermore, in reviewing the report along with the appendices, I have to raise several red flags regarding the products selected, as they are inaccessible to many. For example, there are many issues with the big concrete benches that look like pebbles, the same color as the sidewalk. The standard benches selected are not appropriate. The bike racks need to be color contrasting. We need to discuss tree planting frequency and foliage type to ensure the shadows aren't affecting people's vision unduly. Flower bed design, possible shade sails, bench frequency, possibly alternating regular benches with hitching post style half benches that don't require people to sit fully to find a resting point, and much more. Appendix A to the report specifies that it is in accordance with the AOD and the barrier-free design guidelines, but there is no mention of ACPD consultation as is required. I'm not trying to be a hurdle or impediment to any project. I just believe it is important to make every part of Hamilton the most accessible and enjoyable as we can. If it is accessible to persons with disabilities and seniors, then it is accessible to everyone. I'm trying to be proactive and save the city time, money, and effort, as it is far more costly to fix them after installation, as Kitchener-Waterloo discovered with the ION platforms. I also want to mention the issue of urban braille. There is some consternation that as a Metrolinx project, we may have Metrolinx impose their design features over City of Hamilton. Urban braille is not done in other municipalities as we do it here, and I would like to ensure we continue as we have, because it is an effective accommodation for persons with vision loss while not being an impediment or hazard to other disabilities. While I have no official standing to speak for the ACPD in this delegation, I believe they would be only too happy to work with planning and economic development to address the accessibility shortcomings and barriers to ensure the street design and furniture guidelines are not only in compliance to minimum standards, but truly accessible. It should serve as an example to others on how it is done. I myself just had it confirmed that one of my children does have a connective tissue disorder. While that's not entirely unexpected, the knowledge drives me to redouble my efforts in making Hamilton more accessible for everyone, including my children and grandchildren. I can say with absolute certainty that I'm prepared to do whatever it takes to make it so. Thank you all for your time and attention.
Thank you for your delegation. Committee members, are there any questions for a delegate? Member Andrus?
What do you think that this committee and the city, given the limited role we have that Metrolinx is the project director on this endeavor, can do to better represent the accessibility concerns that you've expressed today and previously?
That's a good question. We understand the problems of trying to have conversations with Metrolinx in many, which is why we are doing what we can from the outside in, trying to maintain accessibility as they build it. I assume that we're not going to have much say on, for example, the platforms, but I believe that this report is about the sidewalks around the platforms and whatnot. I wish I had an answer for that. I believe Metrolinx is a very difficult organization to speak to with any clarity.
Is there anything personally I can do as the head of HCBN, who's been actively engaged with Metrolinx about talking about these types of issues, or that this committee could do to push the needle a little bit towards getting a better outcome in terms of accessibility, in terms of safety, in terms of EDI, in terms of making this project a little better?
Yes. The ACPD, for example, went and did a tour of the Grand Rapids Trent. I can't remember exactly what it is exactly. The ION in Kitchener-Waterloo, and we found some issues. And in talking to the city's LRT department in recent times, they also suggested that we tour the Toronto works to understand their approach to accessibility, so that we may better be able to recommend to Metrolinx what we don't want to see in Hamilton. For example, some of the designs that we've seen have a lot of stainless steel and chrome and galvanized metal sort of designs, even knowing that that's not accessible in any way, shape, or form. So these are some of the issues we'd like to make sure we start seeing not in the platform designs.
Thank you, Delegate. Member Andrus, further questions?
Thank you so much for bringing this to our attention. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Any further speakers? Okay, seeing none, thank you again for your delegation, Delegate Kemp. We have no further delegates, so at this point I would need a mover and seconder to receive the delegation. Moved by Councillor Huang, seconded by Councillor Kassar. Show of hands. All those in favor? Any opposed? Seeing none, that carries. Okay, first up for our items of information is our Hamilton LRT project update PED report 25052. And Director Sheikh of the LRT project office will be providing our presentation. Good afternoon, Director. Over to you.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the LRT Subcommittee. My name is Abdul Sheikh, Director, Hamilton LRT Project Office. Today we are presenting the LRT project update, which provides a high-level overview of the ongoing project activities with respect to LRT project. The last comprehensive update was shared in May 2022, and since then we have provided updates on specific topics to the LRT Subcommittee. Since this is the first LRT Subcommittee meeting of 2025, we felt it was important to bring everything together in one comprehensive update. So today I'll walk you through the key components of our project development as outlined in slide you see. This overview is also aligned with the report in front of you today. I'll provide a brief update on each item with more detailed information available in the report for your reference. At the end of the presentation, I will outline the next steps, focusing on what we need to accomplish over the next year to ensure we stay on track for successful project delivery. So the first update pertains to enabling works. The city is leading 5 water main enabling projects, all of which are fully funded by Metrolinx. These projects are essential to ensure that the water main supply remains uninterrupted during the major LRT construction. And in order to maximize the benefit of these enabling projects, the city has coordinated additional roadway improvements, enhancing the overall infrastructure for the benefit of community. Of the 5 city-led enabling projects, the Sherman project was completed last year. The remaining 4, as mentioned on this slide, Wentworth Street, Queenston and Nash, Main and Rosewood, and Main and Ottawa are currently at various stages of development, ranging from the design and tender to construction. And additionally, there are third-party utility works, as indicated on the right-hand side of the slide. This involves projects from Electra, Bell Canada, and Enbridge. So the design concept currently available on the public website is based on 2017 when City and Metrolinx completed environmental project report addendum. However, since then, some design modifications have already been confirmed and communicated to Council through various reports. In addition, the city has adopted new standards and guidelines since 2017, which means we need to revisit and update the design to ensure alignment. We are working with Metrolinx to refine the design concept, and Metrolinx intends to release an updated public-facing conceptual reference design in spring 2025. It is important to note that the design will continue to evolve through the detailed design phase as we move forward with the project. And I have also added a few renderings to this presentation that remind us all of our ultimate goal of building the LRT project. This is a conceptual rendering showing the LRT between the stops at Scott Park and Gage Park stop. At this location shown, this is where tunnel will be constructed in order for the LRT track to go under the CP rails. You can also see 2 lanes for vehicle traffic traveling westbound on the right beside the LRT tracks, which will be at grade at CP rails. And on the left side of the rendering where green car is shown is a new service road which will link Fairview Avenue and East Bend Avenue North. Metrolinx is responsible for the overall project delivery. And given the complexities involved, the major construction will be delivered in 2 main procurement packages. The first package will include all civil and utilities infrastructure. This includes both the city infrastructure and all third-party utility infrastructure. The second package will cover all LRT system-related infrastructure, which includes stops, rails, and systems, which are technically considered all Metrolinx infrastructure. Additionally, there are advanced enabling works required prior to commencement of major construction, the details of which I covered in my earlier slide. Metrolinx initiated the request for qualification, what we call RFQ, for Package 1 on November 6, 2024. The RFQ release event was attended by a range of officials, including representatives from the city, federal, and provincial governments, Metrolinx, and other key organizations. Metrolinx is recommending the Alliance Contract Delivery method for Package 1, which is a form of a collaborative contracting model. The Alliance Contract Delivery model consists of 4 phases. RFQ, request for qualification, that's the first phase. This is the initial qualification stage, which is currently underway. The second phase is request for proposal, RFP. At this stage, shortlisted team will be submitting the detailed proposals. And third phase is development phase. This phase focuses on the design and schedule development. And then final phase is implementation phase, which is a construction and commissioning phase. Metrolinx anticipates issuing the RFP in spring 2025, after which one shortlisted partner will proceed into the development phase, which is phase number 3. However, it is important to note that the timeline for both development and implementation phases are still to be determined as we move forward on the project. Now I will recap our LRT operations model. In 2023, staff were tasked with assessing the city's role in operations of the LRT system. This assessment was completed in 3 stages. Stage 1 involved defining the operational models and developing assessment criteria to evaluate. Then in stage 2, we presented to LRT subcommittee, focused on conducting a preliminary analysis of different operational models under consideration. Then stage 3 included a final analysis, followed by a recommendation of preferred operation model. Council's recommendations on the preferred operation model were received at the April 17, 2024 GIC meeting. Currently, the city is awaiting Metrolinx's final decision on operations model, which will guide us through the next steps. Lots of text here, but I will be brief. According to the MOU, Metrolinx is responsible for constructing city infrastructure that meets 3 key criteria. And I think it's important to mention because that discussion keeps coming, whether we are building like for like or not. But an MOU does include 3 conditions which Metrolinx is obligated to construct. First one is it must build according to the standard and guidelines adopted by the city 3 months before the issuance of RFP, request for proposal. So that's a key one. The second one, it must replace existing city infrastructure and assets on a like-for-like basis, unless specified otherwise in benchmark PSAS, which we call Project-Specific Output Specification, which was completed in the previous iteration of the project. And there is also a third condition. It also must comply with the city's laws and applicable federal and provincial laws. So as one of the conditions for Metrolinx is to use the city standards and guidelines, city staff have taken the opportunity to streamline, address gap, and expedite necessary revisions to the city standards and guidelines. So in preparation for the 3-month submission requirement prior to the RFP, A comprehensive library of over 80 standards, criteria, and guidelines have already been submitted to Metrolinx for their inclusion into the project. Here is another conceptual rendering at Wellington Stop, across from the Wellington Park, which is on the left side. At this location, the train will be center running with a lane of traffic in each direction. So with respect to property acquisition and demolition, Metrolinx is currently leading the property acquisition and negotiation process for the project. In total, approximately 102 full properties and 240 partial properties purchases are required. To date, 79 full properties have been acquired by Metrolinx, and acquisitions of both partial and full properties are ongoing. 49 demolitions have been completed on the LRT project. The expropriation process has already been initiated, including 15 additional full buyouts to ensure the project move forward as planned. On the city's side, we have successfully negotiated with Metrolinx for wider pedestrian zone for 132 property which Metrolinx is acquiring, which will improve the overall public space. Additionally, the city and Metrolinx are in process of negotiating the transfer of portions of 14 adjacent municipal properties into road right-of-way, ensuring the necessary land is available for the project. For project-specific communications, and Metrolinx holds the overall lead and responsibility, including making major announcements. In June 2024, Metrolinx opened its community office, which serves as a key resource for residents and stakeholders. City and Metrolinx community engagement staff work closely together to address and resolve residents and media inquiries in a timely manner. Additionally, both teams continue to meet regularly with the stakeholder and community organization to ensure ongoing dialogue and engagement. Regular team meetings between City and Metrolinx staff are held to discuss engagement opportunities and communication strategies to keep the community informed. As the project progresses, Metrolinx is in consultation with City will develop a comprehensive strategy aimed at supporting local businesses affected by the project. Metrolinx and MTO both recognize the importance of the affordable housing and community-based benefits, which is reflected in our MOU with Metrolinx and MTO. City staff in the corporate real estate office has compiled preliminary options for strategic land acquisition along LRT corridor. These options are intended for municipal uses, including affordable housing, community services, and other amenities. To move this forward, the province will be initiating working groups meetings to explore effective approaches to meet these objectives. City staff have been actively following up with the province to kick off these working group meetings, ensuring alignment and progress on these critical community benefits. The MOU was ratified in September 2021, and Council has provided delegate authority to the city manager to execute several key agreements as part of this project. To date, we have executed a staffing agreement, communication protocol for the pre-procurement phase, and the preparatory activity agreement for enabling project. We are almost in the final stage of execution of the real estate protocol, dispute resolution protocol, and governance protocol. There are also several other schedules that are currently in active negotiation or still outstanding. The details are provided in the report as an Appendix A. These agreements and protocol are essential to ensuring smooth project execution, and we are actively working on them as we progress. Here is the third conceptual rendering at the Queen Street stop. You can see the Scottish Rite in the back of the slide. At this location of the LRT will be side running on the south side of King Street with one lane running westbound on the north side of King. The MOU allows the city to request enhancement, or we call betterments, to city infrastructure as part of LRT construction. However, the city will be responsible for funding any incremental costs associated with enhancement item beyond Metrolinx's basic obligation to build LRT project. To support this, the city has allocated 2 budget items in 2023 tax and rate supported capital budget, which included $10 million for public realm improvements and another $10 million for underground infrastructure improvements. As the design progresses, staff will compile a list of potential enhancement or betterment items and present them to council for approval at the appropriate time before we enter an agreement with Metrolinx. This project represents the largest linear infrastructure initiative and the first ever LRT project in the city. And this comes with several challenges and require careful coordination with Metrolinx and designer and its constructors. To overcome these challenges, staff have reviewed similar projects to learn from the experience and knowledge of municipal teams in comparable roles. So in doing so, staff have identified several opportunities to streamline, adapt, and revise existing processes to improve efficiencies. So these is streamlining the city's current processes aim to ensure smoother project delivery and reduce delays. And some of the examples are provided in this slide. While we are actively working on various project activities, staff have also addressed council directions and various important aspects of LRT project to ensure alignment with the city priorities and policies. Key ones are shown on this slide. These reports and direction guide the project's development and help integrate key social, environmental, and economic factors into the delivery of LRT project. So this completes the update on all the project activities that the staff are currently engaged in. And now I will shift to the project activity that we plan to focus on over the next 12 months. The city will continue to lead the design and construction of cities enabling works, ensuring that its schedule, protocols, and agreement outlined in the MOU are developed and followed. City staff are also investigating enhancement, which also called betterment, to be included in the LRT project, helping to align with broader city goals. And as part of our responsibility, we will review, approve, coordinate, and issue permits for third-party utility works within the LRT corridor or adjacent as well. Once the working group is formed by the province, the city looks forward to collaborating on affordable housing and community benefit programs to ensure these objectives are integrated into the LRT project. And we will also continue to address council and committee direction, ensuring that all requirements are fulfilled and as project progresses. Additionally, the city will continue to support Metrolinx in several key areas, including advancing the design, navigating the procurement processes, managing property acquisitions, and engagement with community and stakeholders. And here is the final conceptual rendering of the LRT Parkdale stop. As shown, the track is center running with one traffic lane on each side. Just to the west of the Parkdale Avenue intersection, there is a designated bus bay area for low volume buses operating along the LRT corridor. So this concludes my presentation, and I would like to extend my thanks to the committee member for providing this opportunity. And if you have any question, my team and I would be happy to provide responses.
Thank you so much, Director, for the very fulsome presentation. Speakers list is open. I see Councillor Huang and then Member Andrus. And if the rest of you could, who have access, indicating on eScribe, that'd be great. Or if you're going to indicate by raising your hand, you can do so on the screen with the raise the hand icon for non-council members. Thank you. Councillor Huang.
Thank you for this. It was an excellent presentation, and I appreciate it greatly. I have two questions. As it relates to the underground enhancements, what are some of our initial thoughts on what that would be? What are some of the ideas or thoughts that we would like to see in those subsurface underground enhancements?
Sorry. Through you, Madam Chair, I'm not sure if Director Winter is here, but the idea, we are still in early stages, Councillor. It could be anything, like if we want to upgrade upsize any infrastructure for future development, for example, or could be sewer separation, which we are currently working with Metrolinx. So there could be lots of items, but I'm not sure if Director Winter is online. If not, then Then we are still in the preliminary stages, and we will be continuously working on Metrolinx to see where the enhancement items.
As much as I love water and as much as I think that we ought to have that sort of infrastructure, what about broadband opportunities, like essentially the opportunity to put in a conduit so we can increase the amount of fiber that we might be able to wire our city with? Is that under consideration in these subsurface underground enhancements?
Through you, Madam Chair, exactly. So we are actually working with Cyrus, Chief Information Officer, on this important item. We are still not sure whether it's going to go under the rate budget or under the public improvement budget we have, right? So rate budget is only for the water mains, storm and sewers. So probably it's going to go under the public realm account, but we are in active discussion with Metrolinx to have some future conduit and fiber optics for our future communication needs for the corridor.
Yes, there's an opportunity for revenue generation potentially with the addition of additional conduit or dark fiber that we do have capability in enabling. My second question through you, Chair, is around affordable housing and the community benefits. I know in my ward, we have the privilege of being home to Ontario Aboriginal Housing Services. They have space that is currently at the corner of Kenilworth and Main Street. Much of that corner actually has been expropriated by Metrolinx. However, they have a project of affordable housing built right in behind them, but timing just doesn't seem to be working because they really want to break ground and get her done now. But it feels like, based on your update, that we're nowhere near having those conversations with Metrolinx to enable further affordable housing when we know OAHS is ready to go today. Because if they had access to a little more space from Metrolinx, they can go from 40 units to 102 units. So it's pretty significant. So what's the time frame here? Because I'm worried that we're missing out on opportunities like OAHS or any of the other providers that might be interested in getting involved here.
Through you, Madam Chair, Councillor, very good question. And I can tell you, this is such an important piece which we are almost on a regular basis discussing with Metrolinx. And Metrolinx, as you know, like affordable housing is beyond Metrolinx, is more province. So we have been communicating with MTO, and we are still waiting for working group to be established. We have already sent communication, and we are actually waiting for the working group to be established to have those kind of meaningful discussion. In terms of Metrolinx, Metrolinx is here to build the project, right? But this is the reason we have actually sent our formal communication to the ministry to start initiating these working groups so that we can discuss these opportunity. And I know like that development is particularly waiting for Metrolinx or province input on that part. But we will be continuously following with ministry on that issue.
So I'll be continuously following up with you and Metrolinx about that project. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Next up, we have, I had mentioned Member Andros had indicated at the same time as Councillor Huang, so I'm going to honor that when I named it publicly. Then we have Councillor Kassar, Councillor Crutch, and then Member Walsh.
So a couple of quick questions. So the last fundamental community engagement on this project was on 2017 by Metrolinx. Is there any plans in the current design proposals to run through the new iteration of what that looks like? And I obviously, I know it's not your office's responsibility, it's Metrolinx, but is there any plans to maybe re-engage the community again, especially around stop design, stations, lighting? Like you've presented today or will be presenting today some great outlooks on garbage cans and lighting, but the community has not been engaged on these things. So I'm just curious, does Metrolinx have plans to re-engage the community?
Through you, Madam Chair, thank you. That is actually Metrolinx question. They are overall lead of communication and community engagement. But what you mentioned about the formal communication or public consultation back in 2017 when we were in a formal environmental assessment process, right? And my understanding that there were a number of, after 2017, especially when Project Revive, there were a number of other events, especially there was a virtual public event which Metrolinx held. They provided update. There were lots of other community events they held, right? So if you remember, there was a report we presented in communication and community engagement back in September 2024, where we provided all the details. So beyond environmental assessment, we, and actually working with Metrolinx, there are a number of community engagement and is working with the different BIAs, elected members, there are lots of consultation already happened, right? So in terms of other formal communication, similar to Public Information Center in 2017, we have to take that information to Metrolinx. I know like when they are in a process, they do have some kind of a formal process in terms of touch points to provide the information what they are working on, but we have to get back to Metrolinx on that part.
Yeah, and my other question is just around changes in the city of Hamilton with the new anti-rent-eviction bylaw and some of the negative media coverage that Metrolinx has got around the treatment of some tenants, and what your office is doing to make sure that city policy aligns with what Metrolinx is doing, especially to tenants. So I would like some reassurance from your director, even to put you on the spot, sorry, to make sure that they're at least in line with new city bylaws, especially around tenant defense and support.
Through you, Chair, thank you for the question. We can do whatever, so what we have done, we brought all the parties together, like city housing secretariat, right? So, while Metrolinx is working on the property and tenant relocations, so we try to help to bring all parties together to help Metrolinx where we can mitigate some of these concerns, right? So we have actually done a couple of already sessions, and Metrolinx is directly in consultation with a number of, housing services where they can take benefit of those. So we have already engaged all together, and we will continue to do so.
Thank you.
Thank you, Member Andrus. Next up, we have Councillor Kassar.
Thank you. Good to see you, Director Sheikh. Thank you for the presentation. Just a couple questions around slide 9 on city standards and guidelines. It speaks to here that the standards that will be moved forward with are what's in effect 3 months prior to the request for proposal. So given the timeline for the RFP that you mentioned, are we now in that 3-month window, or are we about to enter it?
Through you, Madam Chair, Councillor. Good question. We actually, as you know, RFQ is already released, and the Metrolinx is aiming to release RFP in spring 2025. And we actually worked backwards, so we actually had assumed January 31st is the cutoff date.
Right.
If Metrolinx goes forward in spring 2025. So we were working with various city staff to compile, revise, streamline all of our city standard by January 31st. And that's one of the examples you will see today as well.
Right. Okay. Yeah, that was my question then. Given that we're kind of on that cusp then, had we done that work to make sure we're where we need to be? And so that, Chair, the answer I heard was yes. And then I think my second question was, I think I also heard it, you're referring to the next presentation, which I think you said you're going to see that today, and it was a topic from the delegate. So was street furniture and that sort of thing a part of that review? Through you, Chair.
Through the Chair, when the next presentation comes, we can discuss in detail. But what we were trying to do here, develop a baseline design so that Metrolinx is able to build, right? There will be some changes, those will be continued discussions with Metrolinx when they have an alliance partner, designer, and contractor. There will be some enhancement, but right now what we plan to do, just bring all the standards together to the best of our ability so that this is a baseline design.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you for that. And Chair, I know that's kind of straddling two reports, so I think I got the answer I wanted to hear. Thanks.
Appreciate that, Councillor. We will deep dive a little bit more in the second presentation. Next up, we have Councillor Crutch, then Member Walsh.
Thanks, Director Sheikh. My question is kind of about the vibe of all this, and it's a bit of a weird question, but I'll do my best to ask it. Generally speaking, in my experience, when a lot of detail is provided, like you're doing, which I appreciate, over a multiple number of years, when we get to the place where suddenly things are actually happening, they start happening really quickly. And suddenly there's not as much time to do the things maybe we wanted to do without risking the timeline of the project. And frankly, this has been mentioned so many times in public that I'm sure you're aware of it. But this is a once in a generation or perhaps in a century opportunity for the city of Hamilton to improve what I consider to be coordinating works above like for like that we have right now as part of our infrastructure. And so can you identify for me in a bit more detail exactly when those sort of milestones are to have those conversations and exactly how staff at the city will be bringing forward those opportunities for us? I'm worried that we'll be taking a slightly conservative approach to this, which won't allow us to actually understand what opportunities are available for us. So what is it going to cost to go from a certain millimeter pipe to another millimeter up to this? What's the highest we can go? That kind of stuff. What is it going to mean to change certain parts of our street fabric and road fabric and so on into the night? So just want to know if you could tell me exactly when and how those opportunities will be brought here so we can have discussions about them and be presented with the options.
Through you, Madam Chair, Councillor Crouch, very good question. What staff, like as I mentioned earlier, Metrolinx is planning to go through the Alliance project model. And Alliance is kind of a collaborative procurement model, which is existing back in Australia, UK, and it's really a highly collaborative model. And what we envision that city staff, especially the subject matter expert, will be at the table with the contractor and designers. So I think that will be the development phase, which is the third phase under the Alliance procurement model, which I mentioned. So under the development phase, staff will be working closely with the designer and contractor and bringing all these elements to Metrolinx and their designer contractor for their consideration. As soon as we have more information in terms of budget impacts and those kind of things, we will bring those information to the LRT subcommittee and council for consideration. So right now our mandate is to come up with a baseline design to best of our ability. And as you will see that design, street furniture is also one design. Last time we presented about the downtown streetscape improvements. So these, what we are already currently working on, but these will actually, when they are in a development phase, we will be discussing with the designer and contractor for the implementation of these enhancements or any other new innovation or any other ideas going to come through that design phase, we will bring to the LRT subcommittee and council.
Thanks. I think you partly answered my question. A lot of this is operational, and I understand that you're going to be at the table having these conversations. And that's not my concern. What I guess I'm more concerned about is, you gave us a good history of the reports that have been brought forward to the committee. I'm worried about it being 2028 and me being said, well, Councillor, we brought that report forward to the LRC subcommittee in 2026, and that would have been your opportunity to say X. Or we brought this other report forward in 2027, and that would have been your opportunity to do Y. What I guess I'm looking for is, will you be bringing to us clearly, outside of the history of all the reporting on this has been going on for so long, outside the budget process for our deliberations, the milestones when it comes to those opportunities. I'm just worried it's going to get lost in translation, right? We have citizen members on this committee, we have people watching from the public. You're very well versed in this, but all this minutia, I'm worried things are going to get lost in that minutia or lost in some of the technicalities of it all. So that's what I'm asking for, is more of a basic and general pause at points to say, okay, this is your chance, everyone. Do you want to make improvements? Maybe parts where there's area rating funding that are involved in these kinds of things or other opportunities. How are we going to be made aware of those things here in this political body, not in your discussions with Metrolinx on a day-to-day basis?
And through you, Madam Chair, yes, so Councillor, we plan to bring, whenever they hit any milestone, for example, I can give you an example that Metrolinx is planning to release public-facing RCD. And it's my duty to bring that information to let the council member know what the changes are in the design. And that will be an opportunity to get the comments from the council member as well as the public if anything enhancement needs to be added. So we are actually mandated to bring all the information as we get from Metrolinx. Another example I can provide, for example, as I mentioned, that we have that proactively budget allocated. So we will be working with Metrolinx and discussing with them what potential enhancement is going to add into the LRT project, and we plan to bring that information for council approval. So we are not making decision at the table. We will be bringing those when it requires a budget or another big decision. We will be bringing those information to the council as we receive from Metrolinx.
Thanks, Director. I appreciate that you're making that clear that you're going to bring those opportunities here. I would just ask that time be built in for them, that they be brought in a really clear format.
Yeah.
And, like we kind of stop what we're doing and say, this is an opportunity for the council or for the LRT subcommittee to make this decision. I've seen in the past with smaller projects that don't have this big of an impact, suddenly something's on the agenda, suddenly decisions are being made and things are happening really quickly. This is a massive thing. So I know it's going to move slowly, but just wanted to flag that and appreciate that you're dedicated to doing that. So thank you for answering my questions.
Thank you, Councillor. Next up, we have Member Walsh.
Thank you, and through the chair, thank you for the presentation. Really appreciate the updates that it includes. Under small business support and grant programs, the next steps in this document seem to focus mostly on repeating that scan for the best practices and presenting that information back to this committee in late 2025. I believe that the original directive had also asked staff to work with Metrolinx, FedDev Ontario, and other partners to implement and market those programs prior to major construction. So I'm just wondering what the timeline is on those next steps in the process.
Thank you, through Madam Chair. As you mentioned about the council direction we have about small business support and grant, and we are committed to we are committed to scan every year and bring the information when there is a change. So for your, for your awareness, we already have a schedule of our quarterly touch points with our economic development, LRT project office, and Metrolinx. We actually discuss these opportunities. And if we find any new information coming that we plan to bring to the LRT subcommittee. In addition to the direction we have, Metrolinx also has a Pillar 4 community engagement, community benefit Pillar 4, which when they are closer to the active construction, they will provide a comprehensive information for city, working with the city, that how the small business support will be available for major construction. So we already are engaging with Metrolinx. We have the quarterly touch point. Economic Development Department is already leading this task, and we will bring those information as they arise from those discussions.
Thank you. So then, as I remember it, those reports were mostly information-based and kind of just outlined what options there are for different supports. Is it this committee that will be deciding which supports to move forward with, or is that economic development or what have you?
Through you, Madam Chair. So if there is a change to what we previously presented, again, economic development is leading this task. In my opinion, they will bring that information to LRT subcommittee. If there is a financial requirement is included, then that will need to go to the GIC and council. That's the terms of reference for this LRT subcommittee. If there is any financial impact or anything proposal is required, that will go straight to the GIC and council. But we can get more information from economic development and get back to you on that part.
That'd be great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, for a second time, Member Andrus.
Thank you, Chair. Last question. I'm just curious about, you've kind of talked about enhancements that could come, and Councillor Kretsch mentioned that could come from the LRT, whether they were ward-specific dollars or in general levy dollars. And I'm curious what the process is that your office is going to do to engage the public on those specific asks and or on those specific changes to the project, because obviously Metrolinx is going to pay for like, but maybe we want better shelters or better lighting or better cameras and security. So I'm curious where the role is of the public in deciding some of those aspects.
Through you, Madam Chair, Andrews, I did mention at the budget deliberations, and I plan to bring another report, probably not next one, the following one, which will outline the process. So technically, we have allocated $20 million for both, like public realm and underground. So what I envision, which is consistent with other municipalities where I worked with, right? So we will actually develop the evaluation criteria, right? And then we are working with various service areas across the city because they've already identified a number of improvements. For example, the planning has provided that it needs to be an enhanced streetscape in the downtown, streetscape furniture, more pedestrian signals, right? So we'll be working with the various service area. And what we plan to do that we will have a proper evaluation criteria, which is aligned with city mandate and a long-term vision. And then we will evaluate all these items gonna come through the evaluation criteria, which evaluation criteria will be approved by the LRT subcommittee members, right? So, for example, there are 15 items, comes up with 30 million. So we will go through this process of evaluation criteria and all those things, and then we will bring that information to the LRT subcommittee for their approval or for their, like more information. That I think that would be the good opportunity where public can see before we enter into the agreement with Metrolinx, right? So the detailed report will be coming in probably next or following the LRT subcommittee. I will probably outline the whole process, how we are envisioning to spend this dollar in betterment and enhancements.
I only ask because I want to make sure that we're including the work of the recent city gender-based audit and some of the other equity work that's going on in the city of Hamilton, make sure that's represented in something Metrolinx might not pay for, but that we might want to include as a city.
Yeah, through you, Madam Chair. Yes, so this will go into the evaluation criteria, right? So we will bring the evaluation criteria for your endorsement. If anything or more needed to be added, right? So that's what we are thinking about phasing out, bringing evaluation criteria first, and then parallel we are having a negotiation with Metrolinx. Once we know how much the dollar value and those kind of things, right, then we will evaluate and we'll bring information to the LRT subcommittee or council. We will have to determine to have, the approval before we enter into the agreement with Metrolinx.
Thank you, Director.
Thank you. Okay, that exhausts our speakers list. May I please get a mover and seconder to receive the presentation and report moved by Councillor Crutch, seconded by Councillor Huang. And this will require a show of hands vote. All in favor? That's unanimous. Thank you. That carries. Mover was Councillor Crutch, seconded by Councillor Huang. Councillor Wilson, are you indicating to be on the speakers list for the next item?
No, I had a question with respect to the report.
Okay, good clarification, because I did kind of bundle them both together in moving the receipt, so maybe I should not bundle them. And we'll keep the same mover and seconder for the report. The report is now open for speakers list. So on the staff report accompanying the presentation, first up, Councillor Maureen Wilson.
Thank you, Chair. As you know, Chair, we just came off of a budget discussion in which some of us tried to underscore the value of investment and return. And I was wondering, just a question on the report for the Director. On page 2, it sets out some of the enabling works to date, which are sort of relatively geographically compressed, if you will, in wards, primarily, I think, wards 3 and 4. And I wanted to ask the Director, and I had asked him this previously, but I think it's important as a consequence of those budget discussions, if he would be able to provide me with any kind of accounting of the capital investment from Metrolinx that comes with the projects that are identified on the page 2.
Through you, Madam Chair, Councillor Wilson, I will probably ask my manager design, Chris McFatty. He has lots of information. If you can share, Chris.
Thank you.
It's cost apportionate between Metrolinx and city.
Through the chair. The summary that Abdul had provided you earlier showed that the Sherman and Dunsmuir project, which is completed, had a $1.3 million contribution from Metrolinx, a $1.6 million road contribution from Metrolinx, and the city chose to put in $1.8 million, which added a two-way conversion, cycling lanes, replacement of sewer laterals, and an adjacent water main on Dunsmuir that wasn't a requirement of Metrolinx to include in their construction. Wentworth, which is currently under construction, the Metrolinx contribution is $2.2 million. There's no city component to that, so that was solely a Metrolinx project. It was tendered with Wilson and Sherman Works that the city was already going to do, but that just made more sense that you'd get better tax value for both Ontario and municipal. Queenston and Nash was an existing city project to replace 4 large valve chambers in the intersection. Metrolinx accommodated the lowering of the pipe between the north and south because that would be going underneath the guideway. In that case, the city was already spending $4.4 million, and Metrolinx added $271,000 to that and upgraded that particular asset. Main Rosewood, which is in the award process right now, had a Metrolinx contribution of water of $7.3 million, a road contribution from Metrolinx of $1 million, and the city chose to put in $3.1 million, and Councillor Huang chose to put in $207,000. That then changed a project that would have been just the replacement of a large amount of underground sewer and water mains into something that all of a sudden now is a complete street. So there was a road diaphragm, 4-lane road, complete street with bump outs, signal works, tree plantings, and the cycling facilities that the councillor had funded. Maine and Ottawa, which is in the design process, expectation would be it would be constructed by the end of the year. The Metrolinx contribution will be $10.5 million. There is no city works or funding associated for that. So in brief, Sherman and Dunsmuir, Metrolinx put in approximately $3 million. The city chose to put in 1.8. Wentworth was $2.2 million from Metrolinx, no city funding. Queenston and Nash was an existing project that was at $4.4 million that we were already doing. Metrolinx chose to contribute to the lowering of the pipe in between those large valves at a total of $271. Maine and Rosewood, Metrolinx contribution is $8.3 million. City's contribution is 3.1. That 3.1 got us a significantly different road corridor. And Maine and Ottawa is just solely a $10 million contribution from Metrolinx, if that answers your question.
Yes, it does. So my back of the envelope, that's just in excess of $24 million in civil works in a relatively small area of our community, which will greatly serve us today and certainly tomorrow, along with the public enhancements. Thank you, Councillor Wang. And about a $5 million city investment, so pretty good ratio. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Councillor. Any other questions on the report? Seeing none, we already have a mover and seconder, and it's before committee to receive the report. Show of hands, all in favor? And that carries unanimously. Thank you. Okay, on to 7.2, street design and furniture standards for Hamilton LRT corridor, PED 25051. And we have Senior Project Manager of Heritage and Urban Design for the LRT, Anna Crucero. Got it.
Madam Chair, I would like to introduce, if you don't mind.
My apologies.
No.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
please, Director.
While Anna is setting up a laptop, So my name is Abdul Sheikh, Director, Hamilton LRT Project Office. And as my earlier LRT project update included information on completing the city standards ahead of the request for proposal. So we have successfully completed various standards, and today we are presenting one that we believe is particularly important, is a street design and furniture standard for the Hamilton LRT corridor. Anna Krusru, our senior project manager, Heritage and Urban Design, who's working full-time on LRT project, led this initiative. She worked closely with all asset owners, and some of, like asset owners are sitting here and then also available online as well. So this standard has been submitted to Metrolinx in accordance with the MOU timeline, as Councillor Kassar mentioned, 3 months before potential release of RFP, and it's intended to become a part of basic scope of project delivery. So Anna will walk you through the presentation and provide an overview of report content. And following the presentation, we'll be happy to address any questions you may have. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Ana Crugero. As Abdul mentioned, I am a Senior Project Manager for Heritage and Urban Design with the
I'm going to pause you to move the microphone closer to you. We want to be able to hear you loud and clear.
Does this work?
Much better. Thank you.
Excellent. Okay. So my name is Ana Crugero. I'm Senior Project Manager for Heritage and Urban Design with the LRT Project Office. I will be presenting a summary of the street design and furniture standards for the LRT corridor that is to support our staff information report. To set the agenda, I will speak about, sorry, I'm losing some of the windows here. I will speak about the policy context for the new standards and how they are implemented. I will also provide more information on the contents of the document. And at the end of the presentation, I will mention briefly financial considerations and next steps. So the standards build on and update the existing approved City of Hamilton Coordinated Street Furniture Guidelines. They are continuing and provide an independent chapter to these guidelines, and they respond to one of its sections which recommend that we establish unique and consistent furniture selection for high-order transit corridors to improve the image of transits and the experience of transit passengers. Through the detailed recommendations that it provides, the document helps implement the complete streets design manual, and it's addressing Council recommendation associated with approval of this manual, which is directing staff to update roadway design standards and guidelines to reflect it. In 2023, we assessed city policies related to streetscape design, and we noted there were some gaps in our standards. For example, in requirements for street tree plantings in urban conditions, or in the extent and range of our street furniture. We also relied at the time on retrieving standards or policies from a variety of sources which made our expectations for streetscaping somewhat unclear. So the overall objective for this set of standards were first to facilitate access to the existing streetscape design related city requirements, and then, importantly, to identify preferred street furniture options that would allow us to establish a continuous and quality streetscape along the future LRT corridor, and that would help build and support Hamilton's civic image. The document identifies important principles for selecting new street furniture, and these principles are building on those already identified in the Coordinated Street Furniture Guidelines. So the future selection of furniture is supposed to address modularity and flexibility in design. That's to allow different configurations and to address different streetscape contexts. It should ensure for a coordinated style and design theme across the family of furniture elements, and that is to achieve visual continuity and consistency throughout the public realm. It should also address accessibility to maximize and facilitate usage of the public space across different population groups and needs. It should be safe in terms of furniture placement and use, and it should be durable and easy to maintain to maximize the performance of the furniture and our investment. So as I mentioned in the previous slide, we hope to facilitate access to existing streetscape design-related city requirements by consolidating reference to these requirements in one place. I thought it was important to list them and provide a general outline of their scope. The Complete Streets Design Guidelines Manual, these are establishing a baseline for how space should be allocated in the right-of-way to accommodate all users as well as green infrastructure. The Coordinated Street Furniture Guidelines, they're going into a final level of detail. They speak to the ergonomics or the appropriate spacing of street furniture in the pedestrian realm to ensure that they can be accessed and are positioned comfortably. The Forestry and Horticulture Design and Preservation Manual for Assets on Public Property, they're addressing specific requirements for how to build landscape features, what are approved solutions for tree plantings in urban environments, or what are approved plant material applications. And I should note that the manual was recently updated to ensure that we use best practices when we establish those features. Hamilton's barrier-free design guidelines, they identify specific requirements for accessible public realm design. They will focus on appropriate design for pathways and access points. Cities' urban rail design standards, they refer specifically to the sidewalk pavement design, and that's to maximize visibility and safety for pedestrians with visual impairments. We also identified other standards in use, such as the specific parking pay stations placement. We provided context and direction for appropriate placement of street furniture in the pedestrian realm. So we refer to the Complete Streets Design Manual and the recommendations that it makes for the typical pedestrian zone configuration and for prioritizing green infrastructure wherever feasible. So we noted different scenarios we may see in the corridor as shown on the slide, and we identified what we could contemplate installing in those circumstances and where, and take advantage of those opportunities. The document is providing also detailed design recommendations. It has a brief section that identifies options for pavement design. This will largely consist in concrete pavement, but may also include decorative pavers for the buffer zone, street furnishing zone, or the frontage zone. So this may be considered for areas where we see higher pedestrian traffic and commercial activity. We may also see special road pavement design in areas like the International Village, and that will be based on the design we used for the Gore Park area. In terms of landscaping, we acknowledge different solutions for landscape features in the streetscape, like planting beds, street tree planting conditions, and we made reference to those specifications and requirements in the Forestry and Horticulture Manual. We are also providing somewhat general and high-level public realm design recommendations for some special areas along the corridor, like BIA areas. For those areas, we indicate what would be alternative design options for customized enhancements to ensure that we retain visual continuity along the corridor. The International Village, which is going to be subject to custom implementation of pavement design, as I mentioned, and likely, it will also have pedestrianized side street parkettes. And we're also providing some high-level design recommendations and expectations for other sites where we will see wider streetscape or public realm areas. So that would be McMaster University, Jackson Square, Eastgate, where we may see more capacity for those features. The document includes also placement recommendations, depending on context. So we wanted to make sure that we flag those typical placement locations where we want to see installation of these features. Like crosswalks, bus stops, important destinations like grocery stores, schools, parks, commercial streets in particular. We are identifying what would be the preferred spacing for the comfort of pedestrians, the need to prioritize good microclimatic and safety conditions, and we're also trying to recommend types of elements and the adequate configurations depending on location. The second part of the standards is a street furniture catalog, and that's where we are providing a selection of preferred types and models of street furniture. You will see those models included in the report in Appendix A. It's including a range of bench types, backed, backless, armless, also some multi-purpose boulder types of seating elements. And that was to ensure that we'll have options for different contexts, including narrower street furniture zones or small parquettes, and also for different users with different needs. It includes models for bollards, lighted or non-lighted. That is an element that we could use to delineate pedestrian-only areas from areas where we may see vehicular traffic or parking. Waste containers. We chose elements that include weather protection and easy access on the site. Bicycle parking. For these elements, we acknowledge the current types that are used by the city, but also alternative types for special streetscapes or parquettes. Tree grades and tree guards, that is for conditions which will require hardscape surfacing for street replantings. Planters for temporary greening solutions or for those areas where there may not be sufficient space for planter beds. And finally, poles, luminaires, pole arms for banners or flower baskets. Those are for areas where we may be able to accommodate pedestrian-oriented light fixtures. We're also providing notes on how to guide selection between different specifications, different sizes, or alternative models. And we also identify those circumstances where there's a need to consult with staff for specific elements. For this slide, we're providing some information on the existing advertising street furniture program. That information is included in the staff report. But I just want to summarize that the new standards do not provide options for advertising furniture, and it's discouraging these installations along the corridor, and that is to achieve visual continuity and quality within its public realm. It is important to frame financial considerations related to the standards in the context of the Memorandum of Understanding, as mentioned by Abdul. That is requiring Metrolinx to build city infrastructure according to city standards and guidelines in force 3 months prior to the request for proposals issuance. As the new standards were endorsed by the LRT Steering Committee and are now becoming new city requirements, staff will use them to negotiate costs of new street furniture through the implementation of the LRT project. Any incremental costs, including for capital and maintenance, will be subject to council approval as we get closer to project substantial completion, and may be eligible for funding from a council-approved budget for enhancements. So in terms of next steps, we will have to start with a reassessment of the existing street furniture inventory. We will continue with negotiations with Metrolinx on the cost of new street furniture. That will have to happen in tandem with the more detailed design process. Following that, as we mentioned, for any identified cost contribution from the city, we expect to bring information to council for approval. In terms of maintenance costs, incremental costs will be assessed closer to the project substantial completion, and we expect they may be bundled with other operation and maintenance costs for LRT. They will also be brought to council for approval. This concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your overview. We do have a speakers list. First up, we have Councillor Kretsch, followed by Councillor Huang. And before you begin, Councillor, just a reminder for our members who are online, you can use the raise hand icon. And for those of you who are in the room, just nice and high so I can see you. Thank you.
Thank you. So a couple of things from me. Unfortunately, Susie Braithwaite from the International Village BIA couldn't be here today, so I want to address some things she wanted me to raise specifically about the International Village. But I had a couple of other questions I want to start with, specifically about, how this information is being given to us. So when I look at this report, what I understand is that this is the City of Hamilton standard. Obviously, there's been some discussion with Metrolinx about this, but I guess I'm trying to understand where this is coming from directly. Maybe Director Schick, you can answer. Is this coming basically from Metrolinx through you to us, or is this coming from the City of Hamilton in a collaborative process with Metrolinx? I want to try to understand the origin of this reporting so that I can get a sense of where the authority lies.
Through the chair, the standards were created by us, or established by us, the city, through the LRT office, project office. We provided them the final draft to Metrolinx for their information, but they were the result of our work in consultation with our technical team of internal staff.
Thanks. And so how will consultation work about the ultimate implementation or the final design? I noticed in the report that there was some discussion with respect to a detailed phase, which is forthcoming. And so I'm thinking back to the request from the Accessibility for Persons with Disabilities Committee to be consulted on some of the accessibility of some of these things or some of the enhancements. What kind of consultation is going to be done to address those issues?
Through the chair, we understand the ACPD group is an important stakeholder, and we would like to monitor any opportunity to involve them as we're looking at the later stage of detailed design and procurement. I believe those discussions on procurement, installation will follow, and they will be part of discussions with Metrolinx. I will also ask my director, Abdul Sheikh, if you would like to add to our answer to this question.
Through you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Councillor Kretsch, for that question. Just want to mention as your previous question, this is totally an internal City of Hamilton exercise because we were mandated to complete all our standards before 3 months RFP release. And as I mentioned earlier, January 31st, we were assuming. So we worked with the stakeholder to refine, because we found there was some gaps. If we had not provided that standard, then Metrolinx could have done like-for-like basis. Like-for-like means, there are so many variations of the street-side furniture and those kind of things. So we wanted to have some kind of a basic standard to start negotiation with Metrolinx. So I can tell you, as you mentioned, Council, that there will be a development phase, and it's a collaborative contracting model. There will be lots of consultation with key stakeholders, and SCPD is going to be one of the important one. So when we find out what Metrolinx is procuring and those kind of things, so we will like to bring those information back to those relevant committees to get their input. So that will come in the development phase. So right now we just wanted to have some baseline so that we can start negotiation with Metrolinx on further enhancement to the baseline or any changes to be done to the standard what we are presenting here. But that will come through the development design phase.
Thank you. My last questions are about the specific section in the International Village BIA. As everyone here probably knows, that's the section that will be the most narrow, and it will have the most impacts as a result of it being so narrow. Basically, the entire area will be reconstructed as a result of LRT. And so the impacts to businesses are going to be considerable, impacts to the neighborhood. And frankly, what happens here with the LRT is going to change the fabric of the International Village. In the report, it suggests using the Gore Park Hardscape model. And right away, I just want to say, I don't think that makes sense. There's a reason why there's a distinction between Gore Park and the International Village. There's a reason why we have a downtown BIA and an International Village BIA, and the character of those areas is very different. And so applying what I would consider to be a heritage style Gore Park hardscape functionality to an area which is trying to frankly be more vibrant and change and be more modern doesn't really seem to make sense to me. As well, the International Village BIA has been involved in this, this discussion since 2014, and was promised at that time and subsequently to that they'd have a lot more input when it came to this kind of shaping of the street furniture, the fabric of these kinds of things, and are concerned about this. And so all kinds of stuff like, replacement of trees and where they're going to go, maybe creating an awning program for businesses, input into how the Wellington LRT terminal will be named, making sure the arches for downtown Hamilton remain within the boundaries of the BIA, animations for alleyways, loading zone designated areas, and all kinds of other things that are mentioned in this report. I'm not going to get into every single thing. Susie's listed 11 different items here. But I guess my concern is that there doesn't seem to be an opportunity here. It seems to be saying, well, we're going to do this and that's it. We had a deadline to meet. So that was kind of my concern earlier, right? Where was the opportunity, or where is the opportunity for the International Village BIA, myself as ward councillor, to be involved in doing this? I actually saw something written saying basically, well, some BIAs might want to do things differently, but we discourage that. Like, these areas are distinct, they're vibrant, they're business improvement areas for a reason. I think that it would be strange if we had the whole area suddenly conform to a single design standard, just because Metrolinx or the city might think that's preferable. And so I wanted to get an answer about that and about what can be done to, I guess, remedy the issues that they're raising.
Through the chair, the international village area was identified early in the first stage of the LRT project as a special area that needs special consideration for its public realm design. And the PSOS, or the project specific output specifications, include some technical design direction for how we should be approaching pavement design. There are street sections in the EA, the 2017 EA, that show an intention to create a curbless type of, almost like a Wonerf type of street configuration in that area, basically to acknowledge that it has limited capacity and try and make it function and look more friendly and welcoming to pedestrians. At the time, we referred to the Gore Park standard as a baseline for how we should be dealing with pavement design and with some of the elements of street furniture. We did meet this summer with the International Village BIA group and provided a bit of context for how we see that transformation happening, starting with that baseline Gore Park standard. And we heard actually very clearly that they would like more character-defining features, and they would like their identity recognized in the design. So we proposed looking at a different color palette and pattern for that kind of special pavement design. And the pavement design really is trying to respond also to some technical issues where we need to have concrete pavement for durability and also for the economics of designing and constructing this space. But we recognize that there can be a number of artistic expressions embedded in that treatment that can better respond to the historic character of that area. We also acknowledge that there will be limited space for landscaping, but we flagged to all those involved in the conversation, including Metrolinx, opportunities to create a more special and a more welcoming public realm in what will be closed side streets along the International Village, where we can inject more greenery and more opportunities for seating, elements of public arts. It's basically a blank canvas, but those little parquets will have to do the hard job of compensating for the lack of space in the right-of-way. the street furniture elements that we listed in our catalog will be brought in wherever feasible. And really, when we identified a sense of constraint for BI areas to stay with this line of street furniture was really to try and be continuous and consistent throughout the public realm along this streetscape, so that we don't have too much variation and that it really feels like a flowing open space throughout as much as possible. We identified opportunities for custom enhancements, special signage, banners. We can introduce temporary planters wherever feasible. I think all of these details will need to be fitted in and thought through in consultation with the group as we're getting closer to a more detailed LRT concept design, where we understand exactly how much capacity do we have in that space and how much can we do.
Okay, thanks. So I think what you're saying is that there is an opportunity to have a more detailed discussion about this in the future. That's really what I'm looking to hear, looking to understand, is that there is an opportunity to have that discussion, and that yes, while there is wanting to create some similarity along the streetscape, actually with the International Village BIA is saying we want to be distinct and different looking. We want to do what we can. No one is saying, I think, that we understand constraints to do with how wide the street is, constraints to do with some of the technical issues, right? And I'm just saying that I think there's got to be an opportunity there. And despite the fact that you met with them, what they came back and said was, we're still concerned. So when this formal report comes forward like this, it feels very final, and it may not be. I guess I'm just looking for a bit of assurance around the fact that there's still some steps in between here where consultation will happen, and there's a chance to make some custom enhancements if there's a budget to do it.
That is my understanding, yes, and I believe my director, Abdul Sheikh, will be providing the next LRT subcommittee meeting a little bit more information about the enhancement process and how consultation will be fitting in that process. But my understanding is that as we're looking together with Metrolinx at the development of the right-of-way and streetscape, there will be opportunities to gear it towards that direction that we're hoping for.
Okay, last for me, just to clarify and make sure I understand, I think what you're saying, if I understand you correctly, is that in part this is an economic discussion that you're having. So you need to get some of these designs in place. We need to make sure they're in by a certain date. By doing so, we've kind of guaranteed ourselves a kind of good economic position with respect to the street furniture. But if there's a budget available somewhere else, wherever that might be, let's just pretend that is a possibility. Additional enhancements can be made that are outside of the project scope that aren't going to alter the streetscape. So for instance, you talked about public art, planters, different kinds of things. If the street allowance is available, other kinds of fabric or infrastructure that might be happening. And so I presume that's permissible as long as the funding source can be identified.
Through the chair, I will invite Abdul, my director, to respond further.
Yeah, through the chair, Councillor, that exactly, we have the baseline. And again, as I mentioned, that we do have some enhancement budget. And those were the things which we will be looking at. If there is any particular area we need to be enhanced, so we will be going through the process which I mentioned, and we will bring that information for LRT subcommittee or council consideration. And in terms of International Village, as Anna mentioned, that we already have a special character in terms of the payment, the different curb, type, right? So we already have a different character, but now bringing this street furniture is streamlining. But during the development phase, we will be discussing with designer and contractor to enhance, because we don't have a streetscape design yet, right? So there will be a process to go from 30% to 60% to 90%, 100%. Through that whole process, we will be discussing lots of opportunity to enhance the character of and then we will bring the relevant information to the LRT subcommittee.
Okay, thanks. And also, I assume you'll be able to consult with the actual International Village BIA, Director Sheikh, as well about this.
Through the chair, that's our intention, yes.
Okay, thank you so much for answering my questions. I appreciate it very much.
Thank you. Next up, we have Councillor Huang, followed by Member Walsh.
Thank you. Councillor Crutch was already going down the same path. I wanted to understand fulsomely around like how set are these. So I'm glad to hear that it's lots of opportunities in the future and it's not totally set. I have a couple of questions around nimbleness of these standards. Because just as Councillor Kretsch has already identified, and likely Member Walsh is likely going to also talk about, is that BIAs have a different look and feel, they're vibrant in different ways, but we also have large swaths of areas where there are no BIA. So especially in Ward 4, for example, other than the tiny little intersection that's at Main and Ottawa, we literally have no other BIA presence, but yet I would also love to be able to see what are the opportunities for, say, enhancements, but not being totally held to these standards. So I want to understand what is the nimbleness of changing up these standards in the future, or what is the regular cadence in which we're going to take a look at these standards and also think about it from a wear and tear perspective. I just don't want us to be totally locked in on something like this, and I just want to understand what is our thinking for future opportunities.
Through the chair, thank you. That's a really good question. And we did think ahead of time that we need to be adaptable, not knowing a number of factors that can play in and challenge the selection that we chose. We are providing for that flexibility in text and identified that there are a number of circumstances. We didn't want to be exhaustive that may call for choosing alternatives, choosing maybe different finishes or specifications, sizes, models to address our needs. At this point, we identified the principles that we need to follow. We try to illustrate the design, theme, and character that we want to stay with. And we would be open to a process where if these alternatives are brought up, either through procurement or consultation, they will be discussed with the team, and they're subject to approval by the Director of Heritage and Urban Design, just to make sure that we stay with the design intention that we outlined in this document.
Excellent. So I wonder if in this document you can add a section that talks about exactly that, like essentially putting that into print. So then that way we can say, here are the, even though it is already outlined in Appendix A, I see that. I just don't see a section that says, in case of changes, this is the potential protocol that we might want to follow as long as it fits within these sort of like core principles. It's just that it feels like when I'm reading this document, it just feels like this is it. We're not talking about it anymore. So I just feel like I wish that there was a little bit of language in it that just says, in case of emergency, this is another process that we can potentially follow. So I'll put that as a bug in your ear to ask for that. Second is also things that I think when we talk about core principles, I think we need to also speak about, we have the gender-based safety audit that's coming forward. Maybe we ought to throw that in there as a core principle. Another principle might be procurement, like social procurement, or the opportunity to buy local sort of materials. Or I know I did read somewhere that was like, if the opportunity comes, we should buy local as much as possible, but maybe making it a lot more prominent. So then that way it's totally baked into what are the core principles of our decision making. So then that way we have those concepts already like front and foremost beyond, in addition to the accessibility requirements, the finishes, and blah, 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 that sort of thing. So I'm hoping that we can add that just a little more clarity, because if that's this is the opportunity that we're going to be sharing with Metrolinx, it kind of gives them a sense of these are what's really important to us. And then that way we can change it and evolve as we need to. So hopefully that's a bug in their ear, Chair. Thank you.
Through the chair, I'm not sure you were hoping that I answered. I can see an opportunity to clarify that potentially in an appendix. This is supposed to be an evolving document, so definitely we can clarify some of these steps. And I think it's in our interest to make the process more efficient and clear. So something to think about, definitely. Thank you.
Thank you, Senior Project Manager. Director?
Yeah, through Madam Chair, I just want to mention, Councillor Wang, through MOU with Metrolinx, it does allow that. Right now, what we were trying to do, we were trying to set a baseline, but MOU is clear. It does mention that city could add additional enhancement on top of the city's basic standard, right? So that provision is there. So we wanted to really keep that as a standard and guideline so that there's no gray area and, like, so that we can be able to negotiate with Metrolink that is a project cost and those kind of things, right? But the whole purpose of that clause under the MOU where city can add additional betterment enhancement on top of the city standard, which we would like to take leverage when we are in a detailed design phase.
Thank you both. On to Member Walsh, followed by Member Omazik.
Thank you. Through the chair, just some general comments and then a couple of questions as well. So very much appreciate all the work that's gone into these documents, but as the others have mentioned, just some concerns about the process. I know our BIA hasn't been consulted yet and would definitely appreciate that opportunity. I did see that the Complete Streets Manual does have a pretty thorough stakeholder engagement process involved in it that I would recommend would be followed for this project. I'm also a little just generally concerned that I'm not seeing guidelines from the downtown secondary plan incorporated in this plan in any way. I know that secondary plan is where it does explicitly state that BIAs should be given special consideration in our streetscape design to better reflect our unique identities as BIAs, and the plan that we have in front of us here is somewhat recommending the opposite of that. I am encouraged by your previous responses about engagement, but just really wanted to stress the importance of stakeholder engagement and really underline the amount of knowledge that all of these various stakeholders can bring to these decisions about our streetscape across the corridor. And then just questions I have. So how far off the main corridor do these design guidelines reach? For example, will they be applied to the Main Street conversion, and will they possibly eventually bleed into more of a design standard across the city?
Member Walsh, I asked a similar question during agenda prep. Over to you, Senior Project Manager.
Through the chair, on your first question, we will make note of including these other BIAs and groups in consultation as we get a better sense of how that will be included in the detailed design process. For the second question, we followed somewhat established cropped area used by Metrolinx in assessing the extent of influence along the corridor, north and south. And we would be looking at 50 meters north and south of the right-of-way to be implementing these elements. That is to create visibility and, again, as I mentioned, to establish that consistency throughout.
And is that public realm only, or is that applying to private development guidelines as well?
Through the chair, that will be for the public realm.
Okay, perfect. And then secondly, just a suggestion for some data that I think would be very helpful as well. Complete Streets includes an audit tool to assess if all of the needs of a street are being met equally. I'd be curious just to be able to compare the previous street design to these new designs and see what improvements are being made and if there's any areas in which difficulties are arising, or just generally to have that information, I think would be really interesting.
Through the chair, I believe as we will be provided with more refined concept design from Metrolinx, we would be able to make that kind of evaluation and assessment in comparing pre and post conditions for the public realm.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much.
Just through you, Madam Chair, we have the asset owners because there was a discussion about Main Street and others, how it's going to roll out to the cities. Maybe Director Ryle can add something.
Perfect.
Hi, good afternoon. Carolyn Ryle, Director of Transportation. So with regards to this transitioning throughout, we'll say, the greater area of throughout the city of Hamilton, there is a current contract that's in place with transportation and a provider that assists us with the current infrastructure that you see out on many of the streets throughout the city of Hamilton. We are going to be going into a procurement, so we are looking into the next steps around a potential procurement. So the timing around this actually is ideal to understand how, the work that's happening with regards to the LRT scope may, be involved or contribute to the larger piece for the entirety of the city of Hamilton, which will be coming back through Public Works, through transportation as the asset owner regarding that.
Okay, thank you.
Exactly what I was thinking. That makes perfect sense.
Yep, agreed. Thank you, Member Walsh. Next up, we have Member Mazek, followed by Member Andrus, and then followed by Member Wilson.
Through the chair, thank you for the presentation. I was reflecting on the delegation that we received earlier and looking at the standards documents that are being referenced. And I couldn't help but note that the barrier-free design guidelines are nearly 20 years old. And so I'm wondering if those have been updated over time or if they still reflect best practices.
Through the chair, I'm not aware of updates to that document. We are using the one that we have in place at the moment.
And do we know if they still reflect best practices?
Through the chair, I'm not aware of an assessment of their relevance based on current policies. I'm not sure who to defer that question.
We've got Director
Through you, Madam Chair. So we will take a look into it. And in addition, Metrolinx has an obligation to follow AODA. That's their mandate. If something is not following AODA, then they will talk to us that, okay, this is again AODA. So Metrolinx has a process AODA, but we will look at that, standard barrier-free guideline. And if there is any further information we have, we will bring to the next subcommittee.
Thank you. Member Mazek?
Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, Member Andrus.
Thank you very much, Chair. I appreciate this document and your forthrightness in answering a lot of questions. I have several concerns, especially around the AODA as the minimum standard for disability. It tends to be thrown around a lot, but it is not the adequate standard for most people with disabilities. It's more of a bar. And I'm also a little bit concerned around some of the design elements, for example, the bench concrete stones that match the color of the ground that are literally listed on Appendix A's report that could provide a serious visual impediment as they match both the ground under them and the Series 600 waste containers, which I have seen used in other cities that tend to get overfilled and turn into eyesores very quickly. So those are my two primary concerns from the Appendix A. And then just going back to other points on engagement and how we are going to involve the broader community in this streetscaping. I understand you have to set a baseline for Metrolinx and for costing, but I think there needs to be a public input on some of these things that not necessarily have an extra cost attached to them, but in what we're going to demand as Hamilton residents from this project and from the streetscape. Thank you.
Through the chair, looking at those elements you mentioned, so the pebble-like boulder seating feature, we wanted to choose something that would add an element of playfulness to the streetscape where and if we're going to have space for that kind of element, for that kind of feature. We expect that most of the seating needs will be addressed by using the other models that provide a more ergonomic and comfortable seat solution. A really good point was made, though, and I could see how that could be read as an obstruction or could become an obstruction as people with different needs are navigating the public realm. So something for us to take back and consider the context or the mitigation options to still allow introducing some of these playful features, but maybe in a way that makes them safer for the typical pedestrian user. Going to the waste receptacle, it's very similar to other waste receptacles we've seen with different vendors. We wanted something that was adaptable to different contexts, and because it has that kind of columnar structure and scale, it's easy to place in different locations where we may not have space for more ample type of receptacles. It's also very accessible because it has access on both sides and it has the weather protection. Definitely, we do expect that there may be vandalism and likely graffiti. We looked at finishes that the vendor can provide to help us manage some of those scenarios and either maintain, or either clean up or refinish them.
Thank you. Can you speak a little, though, to my question around engagement and how we might involve the broader public in these choices? Like, you've presented us a suite of options that cost X dollars, but could we not engage the public for the same cost in a different way? And what does that community engagement outreach look like for this transformative project?
Through the chair, I'll provide just a preliminary response and then look forward to my director to elaborate on that. We did look as a default at both local vendors or vendors that have local contacts and manufacturers that can facilitate the procurement of those elements. And we also try to compare as best as we could the bulk price of these elements with what we have in place right now. So we were trying to look at the economy of bringing these elements into the public realm. In terms of having more detailed evaluation of those costs, I think that will follow as we're getting a better sense of the capacity of the public realm we have and the opportunities to introduce these elements and the future inventory that will cover that. I will defer now to Abdul for further elaboration.
Through Madam Chair, I just want to add what Anna mentioned in terms of consultation. When we were developing the standard, it's not just coming from LRT project office. There were asset owners were heavily involved, and they have their expertise in terms of maintenance, accessibility, customer experience. So we actually utilize the in-house experience they have in terms of maintenance, customer experience, and other. And we were trying to create a baseline. And as I mentioned earlier, Member Andrews, that when we are in a development phase, there will be lots of opportunity discussing with the designer and contractor. And there will be a stakeholder consultation, and SCBD, like accessibility, is such a key important stakeholder. So we are not just going to build, so there will be a periodic update at SCPD about what we are building when we have concrete information, right? When the designer is there, maybe we can bring their consultant, Metrolinx consultant, to provide more information and those kind of things. So I can see lots of opportunities that what we did in other municipalities in my previous history, that we actually brought some consultant providing the information to the committees, providing the similar example, because like a standard does allow some similar examples, right? So as Anna mentioned, they may bringing some for innovation. Oh, where can we just build this one? And they will come to us, we will look for the approval, and then probably we're going to go to the SCPD for their feedback before we adopt any new standard, right? So there will be lots of opportunity going forward into the development design phase.
Thank you, Director.
Member Wilson, and then followed by Councillor Maureen Wilson.
Yes, thank you. To the chair. this sort of follows a couple of the other councillors talking about BIA. So where the line ends at Eastgate is beyond the 14 kilometers of the LRT. There's another 13 or 14 kilometers of city Hamilton, which is the community of Stony Creek. I'm assuming that we all want ridership from those people. So I want to make sure that everybody understands that that terminus, which I know there's 100 unanswered questions about the development there, but we can assume that there's going to be huge development with dozen condos, with hundreds of new condo dwellers, with hundreds, perhaps thousands of cars, all coming into Eastgate, all going down 20 Highway to the new GO station. I don't want Eastgate to just be some concrete terminus with no, so even though it's not a BIA, it is the gateway to the rest of Hamilton's Stony Creek and should be thought of as a community part where, so if there isn't a BIA, it almost should be, if you know what I mean. We want it to have some community, some warmth, some, not just a bus station or, you know, it can't just look like some concrete terminus. So it's important, I think, that we understand that that gateway is a gateway to the city. It's a gateway to the LRT system. It's a gateway to Stony Creek from going the other way and into the Niagara region. It should be beautified. So I want to make sure that some of the funding and the appropriation money and the standards money that we're talking about, some budget, that some of it is really not left out for Eastgate. Thank you.
Through the chair, I will defer the question to our Chief Planner, Anita Fayback.
Good afternoon, Anita Fayback, Acting Director of Planning and Chief Planner. In terms of that LRT stop and the Eastgate development, there is a private development application that has been made for those lands. It's a draft plan of subdivision, and while it's at the early stages, what it does look at is how can this development connect to that LRT stop? And that's including public realm space on the private property, as well as, I'm going to call it a bus depot for lack of a better term, but a place for passenger pickup and drop off on the Eastgate property. So it is in the early stages. It did just receive draft plan approval, I'm going to say maybe 4 to 6 months ago. And so again, that design will come out through consultation with that developer and with staff from within the Planning and Economic Development Department, LRT, and HSR staff as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I appreciate that chance to have consultation on that.
So you were a little bit choppy at the end, but I think I heard you say thank you and you look forward to the opportunity for consultation.
Correct.
Thank you. Okay, Councillor Maureen Wilson.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation and answering all these questions. I just want to make sure I think it's pretty clear, but I just want to make sure if I could ask a question with respect to Appendix A, because part of it was referenced in the presentation. In your presentation, you referenced, I think, 3 sites for special streetscape design: McMaster, Eastgate, and Jackson Square. And I'm hoping I know the answer, but I'm wondering if you could just expand on why those 3 sites, and that will lead me to my next question. Thank you, through the chair.
Through the chair, those are the areas where we expect a larger public realm that can be fitted within the existing right-of-way, and where we can contemplate improved public realm features and streetscaping. Those are not unique. We expect that as the concept develops, and even as we're seeing new private development along the corridor, we may see new expanded right-of-ways that could embody that capacity and that role in acting as an enhanced open space.
Thank you. Just a comment, if I may, and kind of a question. I've been elected since 2018, and I don't think in that time, Chair, we have had a discussion and/or presentation, and I'm hearing it, there's a weave throughout these themes, but it's not really explicit. We haven't had a conversation about the importance of design, about the importance of public space, about the importance of maybe why some stations will play a little bit of a different role than others, the importance that that has on economic development and uplift. And I think we have to, in my opinion, and I will work offline if I can with the chair and the director. I think there is an opportunity, because if we are going to have that engagement, that engagement be sort of bookend by some objectives, and the importance of placemaking and public space and street furniture to maximize the potential of this once-in-a-generation opportunity. It stands to reason that if at a station stop there is enough public space, it stands to reason if that public space is inviting, if that public space is accessible, then what happens is first you attract the hot dog vendor, then you attract the small commercial enterprise, then you attract, it is an indicator species. It cascades, it triggers a number of things. Those things, that space is not nice to have. That space is absolutely critical to the maximization of this investment, and it is a form of reparations to a lower city whose space was absolutely obliterated in the 1950s. And as I said, and 60s, that is why we do have billboards and we don't have small businesses. It was designed for a purpose. And I do think if we're going to move, and we are moving further along here in this, that we have to have maybe a speaker or two come in to talk to us about that. Because I am worried that it's going to be framed as fluff as opposed to absolutely essential ingredient. And my other comment is just, Chair, my bias is in decorating a house, you need some sense of uniformity. I'm actually liking the flow and the uniformity with the ability to, add on a little thing or two. If it's a kitchen, then you do this or that. But I think some sense of order and similarity is part of that enhancement. So thank you for the time, and I'll work with you offline and my colleagues. Thank you.
Thank you. And that exhausts our speakers list. Thank you so much for your presentation as well as responding to all the questions. Really appreciate, especially when staff have to be on their feet for so long. Okay, so mover and seconder to please receive the presentation and the report, since we bundled questions on the appendices as well. Councillor Kassar, Councillor Huang, all those in favor, please vote by show of hands. And that carries. Thank you. On to motions, and I will ask Councillor Crutch to take over chairing, please.
Happy to do it. Go ahead, Councillor Nan. Please introduce your motion and your seconder.
Thank you. It's moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Huang. The whereas is this was tabled, I think, previously as a notice of motion, so it shouldn't be coming as a surprise to any committee members. But whereas Whereas, as owner of the Hamilton LRT project, Metrolinx is responsible for project procurement, scheduling, and delivery. And whereas the Hamilton LRT subcommittee's mandate includes providing input and guidance to the LRT office project team on significant issues and decisions, as well as engages the broader community on a regular basis throughout the design, planning, and construction process of the LRT. And whereas the LRT subcommittee is the most direct source of official updates for residents of Hamilton. Therefore, be it resolved that the City of Hamilton requests that staff from Metrolinx attend the LRT subcommittee on a regular basis to provide updates on project milestones and the overall progress of the project, to inform and educate residents about the project, and to leverage an opportunity to understand better the areas impacted. And if I can, through you, Vice Chair Kretsch, today's conversation really brings home why it's so important to have our biggest partner in this generational project here at the table in the room, in order to give the confidence to our residents that when this LRT subcommittee is engaged in our deliberations, that we're being heard clearly. And this is in no means any kind of commentary on our excellent LRT office staff. I think we can feel a lot of confidence in the reports and the responses we continue to receive as subcommittee members to our inquiries about where is Metrolinx at when it comes to X, Y, and Z. It would just be that much more assuring and also much more productive for our collaborative partnership going forward at such a critical juncture for us as a municipality to continue delivering confidence to our residents that this work is underway. And I can say, as a Ward 3 councillor, benefiting from a lot of those early works, already making a significant impact to my community, that I can feel confident, right, because I'm seeing the work happen, but residents in Ward 4 perhaps aren't. Maybe residents in Ward 1 are not. And outstanding questions that keep coming forward from residents in Ward 2, 5, and then citywide. And so by having Metrolinx at the table, I think all my subcommittee members would concur, would just really help on a number of fronts. So it's moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Wang. Thank you. Councillor Kretsch.
So sorry, I was just looking at the speakers list. It wasn't up. Now it's up. It's blank. There's no one in the speakers list. Sorry, I was just waiting patiently. And so I do see Member Andrus with his hand up. So we'll go to Member Andrus. And then if anybody else wants to indicate in the room, the legislative coordinators and assistants will update that in the speakers list. Member Andrus.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much for moving this motion. I really appreciate it. I think that there is an incumbent duty on this committee to ask Metrolinx for more transparency and to hold them to the 4 pillars that they profess as core values in delivering this project, including affordable housing, community benefits, and community employment benefits. So I can't vote, but I really appreciate the fact that you're bringing this forward. Thank you so much.
Okay, I'm not seeing anybody else on the speakers list at this time. And to save us from me passing the chair off to someone else to say something, I'm just going to say thanks, and we'll go to the vote. And so at this point, what we'll do is we'll take an electronic vote, I believe, for the members who can vote. And that vote's up on the screen now. And that vote carries unanimously 5-0, and I'll pass the chair back to Councillor Nan.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Any notices of motion, committee members? Seeing none at this time, we're moving to adjournment. There being no further business, this meeting is officially adjourned. Thank you.